Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Take Your Medicine. This is episode 21. My name's Jacob.
And my name is Sadie.
This is going to be a long episode. I forgot my name.
To be fair, before we started this, we both were like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
So we have I have my second cup of coffee. Jacob had a cup of coffee already.
Yep.
And we're going to try to wake our brains up for this one. But
I also did a line of Coke. Just
No.
kidding. Just kidding. This is a
Sorry,
drug-free
Mom.
house.
This is a family show.
This.
It's not.
So let's talk about Gavin Newsom.
Yeah. So once again, we see leftist ideology just eating itself. I don't know if you've heard of this or not yet. But Gavin.
Oh.
Yes, Gavin Newsom. That's what we should call him from now on.
Yep.
Governor Gavin Newsom joins Donald Trump's Truth Social to call out, quote, Republican lies.
Wow.
So,
And this is from the Sacramento Bee.
which I just want to point out that if you're looking up their link, it's sacbee.com, which is stupid.
That's not good.
So this article is very short. It says California Governor Gavin Newsom has joined former President Donald Trump's social media application, Truth Social. Newsom, a Democrat, wrote on his personal Twitter account on Thursday that he was, quote, going to be on there calling out Republican lies, end quote. Quote, this could get ... interesting. The move is the latest addition to Newsom's portfolio as an outspoken critic of conservative states' policies on issues like abortion and guns. He's said he wants California to be a, quote, reproductive freedom state in the face of abortion bans. Following the recent mass shootings, he pushed for more rigorous gun control policies. Such national messaging from a governor is often an indication of presidential aspirations, but Newsom told the San Francisco Chronicle editorial board last month that he had, quote, sub-zero interest in the job.
So a couple of thoughts, unless you got something to say.
No, go ahead.
So I have a feeling that he's doing this partially as a trap. He wants to get on Truth Social and see if the platform's going to ban him. Because if they ban him, then he has the political sort of ammo to say, look, they're not actually about free speech. They just want an authoritarian worldview. So I think to the Truth Social team, obviously, I don't think that they're going to ban him. I think that they're probably going to welcome this because it will bring a certain number of people to their platform with Gavin Newsom.
Right.
But also, if they were to ban him for any reason, that would just undermine the entire purpose of the platform.
I guess, I don't know what their terms of service are as far as like what constitutes a banning or suspension from the platform, because I don't really do social media, and so I never really showed any interest in the Truth Social anyway, because I don't even have Twitter. I just don't.
Yeah,
it's not something that I do. But I imagine their terms of service are a lot less restrictive than Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. So there's probably not much that Newsom can say on there that would get him banned, because anything that he could say that would constitute a banning would be completely against his entire political appearance and agenda. Because if he used a slur or hate speech or anything like that, everyone would be like, wait, I thought you were on our side. So I just don't see it happening. And he's probably going to spend like a month on there and then be like, okay, I'm done with this.
Yeah, but I think Truth Social, they need to be careful not to pull the tricks that Twitter is pulling, where they're suppressing the engagement of political rivals.
Yeah.
So they got to be like, I'm just saying, like, this could be a trap for Truth Social. This is the time where they're either going to stick to their principles and treat him neutrally, just like they treat everyone else, or there's the natural human impulse to sort of slip into that power hungry, like authoritarian, I'm going to de-platform or reduce the reach of this person that I don't like. So if Truth Social can avoid that, then this is great for Truth Social, because you have Getter and you have Parler. No prominent Democrats ever joined those platforms that I'm aware of. But you have a change with Truth Social where a governor is joining it. So this is like a make or break moment for Truth Social, like to stick to their guns and show that, yes, even left-wing people can get on the platform and see lots of engagement. So,
well, and it would be kind of nice to actually see a more right-wing media app become more of like the town square again, like the internet town square again, where you can be on either side of the aisle and have a discussion online without getting banned or canceled or any of that stuff, just because the terms of service support an environment like that. And I know a lot of people were saying that they want a more Wild West Twitter version again, but I know that Truth Social isn't quite that extreme. Like they will automatically delete posts that, go against their terms of service. It's not like you can say anything you want on there. They are very careful about what they let on their platform, but I don't think we have any examples in Trump's presidency of him doing this in real life, like playing the left's dirty games, but on the right.
Yeah.
I think he was good about being the better man in all situations. Like he would call, politicians out or public figures out on their crap and point out obvious lies or obvious sleight of hand tricks that they were trying to pull. But he never played dirty, I wouldn't say. So I can't imagine that he'd allow his developers to do that online with their algorithms. But like you said, it's kind of hard to say because Trump did get banned from Twitter. So there's kind of like we could just ban somebody else, just to give them a taste of their own medicine. But
the other factor here too, and Tim Pool made a good point here, and he's like, even if, it's like 60-40 in terms of the amplification of the left and right messaging on Twitter. So Twitter, in a ratio of 60% to 40%, more often boosts left-wing content than right-wing content. That small difference over large periods of time is going to give the impression that there are more people with left-wing ideas in the country.
Yeah, that's true.
Normalizing that back to close to 50-50, or even right-wing being more popular just because I think it is more popular, might actually just be enough. It might be enough for them to just return to neutrality and show, look, we have a perfectly neutral platform that doesn't have a politically based algorithm, and the conservatives are getting the most engagement.
Right.
I think that's likely to happen. I think it's the artificial suppression is what's making conservative voices quieter on Twitter. And I think, if people were to move to Truth Social, I think that they'd actually see more right-wing opinions just by the nature of they're more popular. So, so it may be the case that Donald Trump and Truth Social team don't ever feel the temptation to censor or depress the engagement of their political rivals simply because they're already in the dominant position.
Well,
right?
And the other thing too is that most people on the right, I would say, actually like discourse. They actually like intellectual debate. The people on the right do not want to be in an echo chamber. We enjoy listening to, maybe not enjoy, maybe that's not the right word, but we like to engage in conversations with people on the left because we want to get to the bottom of their ideology and what is informing your ideology and how do you define everything and how do you justify your actions and this, that, and the other thing. People on the right don't like to just sit around and talk to people that agree with them because you're like, okay, this conversation's exhausted. We agree on all the same points. But people on the left, they love it. They want to just be surrounded by each other all day long. And so these more right-leaning platforms are probably really excited about people from the left coming onto them because they're like, sweet, it's an opportunity to actually have some disagreement or some argument and be like it's debate team again in high school or whatever,
or just like dunking opportunities. Like
I mean that too, but
your position is so untenable, dunk.
Right. Right.
But yeah, to that point, I don't know if it's so much that the left wing likes to be, well, you could say it one way that they like to be surrounded in an echo chamber, but I think a more specific way to say it is that their political viewpoints are part of their identities. And so any disagreements with their ideology is an attack on their identity. And so when that's the dynamic, they naturally want to be around like-minded people because then they get the security of their identity. They get the validation, right? So I don't know, like if you asked a left-wing person, hey, do you like discussing ideas? They'd probably say yes. But as soon as you start actually discussing ideas, they'll be like, you're a hateful bigot.
Well, I guess that's kind of my point.
I know. Yeah. I'm just saying like to say it more specifically, I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. The other thing I wanted to mention was he says he has no interest in running for president, but I really don't know that I believe that. I think he's probably the next person that they're going to try to cherry pick to be the candidate in 2024 because right now everyone's saying Joe Biden, but I give him 6 more months before they're like, his doctor just said he has advanced stage dementia. We had no idea, even though it's obvious to everybody and their mother. So I don't give him much longer than 6 months. If it is 6 months, it could be less than that with
sometime
the rate that we're going.
Midterms.
Sometime after the midterms, I think they're going to be like, oh no, Joe Biden can't do this job anymore. So right now they're saying he's going to be the candidate in 2024. I don't buy that. They were trying to put Harris up as the candidate for 2024, but her ratings are even worse than Biden. So I think they're really trying to hide her now for the rest of this presidential term, because they're like, she's awful. And obviously the Sacramento Bee is not a right-wing news outlet. So the fact that they just kind of mention this in passing, it's really not important at all. So they're trying to kind of wet people's whistles to the idea of Newsom being primaried, I think.
The tricky thing that the Democrats are in a very tricky position, because there's no obvious next presidential candidate. There's none. We have 2 on the right, at least, Trump or DeSantis. Right. And I could name a couple more. Marjorie Taylor Greene would be a great one.
Oh, she'd be awesome.
Rand Paul, after he heavily criticized the COVID policy. I think he's a great... I always liked Rand Paul as a presidential candidate. It just happened to be that there were presidential candidates that I liked more than him every time he ran.
Right.
So if it's Trump or DeSantis, I wouldn't go with him still. But I think someday...
I would say Ted Cruz probably has one more go in him.
Yeah.
Maybe not in 2024, but he might try for president again.
Right.
I think he's a way better senator than he would be president. But
yeah. So my point is that they don't have an obvious next nominee, but then they're also in the tricky position of, you don't want to be the person that loses to Donald Trump.
No, that's true too.
Right? Because like you could, like Newsom probably could very easily secure the nomination, but does he really want to risk losing to the buffoon and bigot and hateful racist that is Donald Trump? I mean, Hillary Clinton, one of the greatest political dynasties of all time in U.S. history, lost to Donald Trump. If you're a Democrat, you're probably just like, I'm going to sit out 2024 because I don't think I could ever recover from losing to Donald Trump.
Well, I was just going to say, not only did she lose to Donald Trump, she's still not over it.
Right.
Because it was only a few months ago that we saw she did that interview where she was like reading her congratulations speech or whatever, and she was like crying. I'm like, oh man, this digs deep salt in the wounds for you. So, yeah, I mean, nobody wants to lose to Donald Trump, but as we've seen, it's possible to not lose to him now.
Right.
We have ways of manipulating that.
Right. So it's like, I think if I was in Newsom's position, I'd be like, I want to preserve my ability to run for president in the future.
Right.
And if I lose to Donald Trump, I think that would close the door permanently. So I'm probably like sitting back and just like, it's a tricky situation. It's a risk. You could try it, but...
Yes, but I think if his party said, this is our plan and you're our guy, he doesn't really have a choice. He can't really say no. Because as we know, the Democratic Party functions more as a whole unit. It's not individuals running within it, doing what's best for themselves or what they think. It's a very coordinated effort. Whereas on the right, it's like, DeSantis has criticized Trump. And he keeps doing things where everyone's like, is he going to run or not?
Right.
You know, so it's not like everyone on the right is coordinating, okay, let's bolster DeSantis because he's going to be our guy. Trump's like, no, I'm running again. You know, it's like there's much more contention on the right within the party than there is on the left. So I think if they tell Newsom, you have to, he will.
Well, I think we have that contention on the right is because we know what we want the country to be. We know what leadership we want. When Donald Trump pushes the vaccines at his rally, he gets booed. And so he stops pushing the vaccines. He did. Because the party has a very clear, like the everyday man and woman of the Republican Party, the new Republican Party, has a very clear idea of how we want to be governed. That gives us an extreme amount of focus that basically eliminates 95% of the Republicans. Like, you're not going to be our president. Don't even try.
Right.
I think the Democrats are rudderless. They don't know to go with the woke stuff. They don't know to go more to like Senator Manchin's side of the aisle, where they're like a little bit less extreme on certain issues like abortion and guns, and more about like going back to working class and maybe a little bit of green energy sprinkled in there. Like, I think that they just don't really have a strong identity right now.
Well, I think part of the problem has been the introduction of these Marxist woke ideologies, because now that is the loud minority of talking points within the Democrat and left-wing parties, everyone's kind of like, okay, we'll just kowtow to those things. Whereas on the right, where we're forming this new kind of conservatism and this new right, especially among young people, we are so sick of being told what we need to do that we are not afraid to tell our politicians now what we want them to do, which is why Trump is getting booed at rallies when he says things that people don't like. Because we're like, we're not going to just take anything that you say anymore. Right. You're going to do what we want. But the left has yet to come around to that because they don't want to say everything we've been doing for the last 7 years has been a disastrous fail. And so they're not pushing back, which contributes to their rudderlessness because they feel like they still have to go along with the wokeism instead of getting back to being the party of the working class.
Yeah, they are in really bad shape because the corporations have all been captured by the woke ideology. So as soon as a moderate Democrat runs for president and says, we're done with this woke BS, they're not going to get any campaign donations from these woke corporations. No. But that may be the thing that you have to do to start winning elections again as the Democrats. I mean, the Hispanics are going to the Republican Party overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly.
There's new statistics that just came out were
and look,
crazy.
These people are working class people.
Yeah.
They're maybe the sons and daughters of immigrants or they're immigrants themselves. But they're also socially conservative, devout Catholics, whatever else. They right. could get along or get behind the traditional Democrat message, which was pro-working class, pro-social safety net, right?
Right.
But the Democrats have moved to this woke, like, oh yeah, you could be whatever gender you want, limitless abortion is a good thing. And these Hispanics are going, well, you have the Republican Party saying, let's bring back manufacturing, let's restrict illegal immigration, which legal immigrants hate.
Yes.
And there's nothing left in the Democrat Party that represents any of their interests. So it's like...
Right, because now they're telling people that single motherhood is great, but abortion's even better. Hispanics don't like either of those things.
Right, because they're very family-oriented.
They're very family-oriented. They're Catholic, so they're obviously against abortion unless your name is Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, she's not Hispanic,
because they're... No, but because they're Catholic, they also are very much, sex is between a married man and woman. So if you're a single mother having a kid out of wedlock, that's a no-no too. They just don't like any of that. They don't want to support that. They don't want to be associated with it. They hate this Latinx crap. Tell a Hispanic that you're using a gender-neutral term, they'll slap you upside the head. They don't care. They do not like it. They're like, this is not our culture. This is not what we do.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Like the Hispanics, like the women are very feminine and the men are very masculine. That's their culture.
Right. Yeah, the women don't work. The women stay home.
Sometimes.
It depends on the family. Yeah. But if you're living in a multi-generational household in the States, all of the men go to work and the women stay home and do housework and child rearing. Because you have 3 generations of women to do that.
Yeah.
So, and then you also have 3 generations of men to go to work as well.
Right.
Unless grandpa's like just sitting in a chair all day, which sometimes happens. But
well, if he's old and he's worked hard,
yeah, right. He can't really work anymore. But you have to look no further than Beto O'Rourke trying to pander to the Hispanic community in Texas, and they're like, "We hate you. Right. Get out of here."
That's proof the simulation is real. His name is 1 letter off of being beta.
I know. I'm like, why would your parents name you Beto?
He's such a beta. Oh my gosh. Like, I wouldn't say I'm an alpha, but that guy's definitely a beta.
I was like, I'd go as far as to say you're a delta. Like, you're way at the bottom of the food chain. I was like, is that a real name? The first time I heard his name, I was like, that can't be real.
Beta O'Rourke.
Yeah.
Beta male O'Rourke.
Because this was like around the same time that the Giga Chad meme was coming.
Sigma male grind set.
Yeah. So I'm like, what in the world is happening? It's just bizarre. What a weird name.
Anything else to discuss on that Gavin Newsom? Gavin, I did it again. I did it
too. Gavin Newsom. The only other thing I would say is I do have kind of a cynical theory about what could potentially happen with presidential candidates on the Democratic side. And that is they're going to come out and say that Biden is incompetent and mentally incapable of doing anything, and they'll just shuffle him away to a home in Delaware and never talk about him ever again.
He would like that.
He would. He probably would not remember his tenure as president at all.
Right.
And then they'll briefly certify Harris.
25th Amendment Harris?
Yeah. And then some kind of Fed boy coup will occur where she's assassinated, but then they never find her assassins, kind of like a JFK situation. And then Nancy Pelosi becomes president. That's my very cynical take on what is potentially going to happen. Why would they need
to go that far? Why wouldn't they just 25th Amendment Harris? 25th Amendment Biden, 25th Amendment Harris? Because it doesn't...
Because I think if they make her a martyr, it'll look better for their party.
Oh, so you think that'll boost their chances, like rah-rah Americans behind
first black female president was just murdered by some crazy right-wing assassin, but it's really just a CIA kind of operation.
Then they could say, look at the right-wing extremism.
And then they're like, we're looking for whoever did this, but they never find them because it was them.
Hate crimes on the rise. This country's so racist they can't handle a black woman as president. They're going to use that to justify...
It's racist. It's sexist.
They're going to use that to justify a crackdown on right-wing people generally, seize bank accounts, all that kind of stuff. That's possible.
And then because Pelosi is such a power-hungry... and very powerful woman
and
already.
Very drunk woman.
Well, her dentures don't fit.
Nancy Pelosi. I like your Ben Shapiro's impersonation.
I don't know if you ever watch Sarah Gonzalez
No.
from The Blaze, but she does a really good Nancy Pelosi. Anyway, I think that is my very cynical take because although Pelosi is old, she's still very politically with it. And she's also very evil. And so I have no doubts that she would be the one to plan this entire thing and lead her party this way without telling anyone who didn't need to know. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Harris never knew that she was going to be assassinated, because why would you tell her?
Well, of course.
But also, I'm just trying to figure out the ways that Pelosi could become president, because I think that is her end goal, but she doesn't want to actually just run for president.
Well, I would say... Number one, I hope that doesn't happen.
Well, yes. That's why I said it's a very cynical idea of what could happen.
And number two, I wish I could say that's completely crazy, but I think it's within the realm of possibility, however small.
Right.
Because, I mean, the CIA, we have documented instances of the CIA being absolutely out of control, but it happened in like the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and everyone just assumed they stopped doing that stuff. And it's like Gulf of Tonkin, Bay of Pigs, Kennedy assassination.
Right. Which they just released all that information about the JFK assassination. And we're like, hello, no one cares?
Right.
Does nobody care?
Well, what about the Panama Papers, too?
Panama Papers.
Which is like the Pentagon Papers as well. So it's like all of these things didn't get the attention they deserved. Why? Do you think maybe the CIA has a hand in all of these things?
And also, they didn't get any attention when the redacted papers were finally actually published because... the CIA is still doing sketchy shit, and they don't want you to get wise to it.
Yeah.
So they release them as they are supposed to do per the law after a certain number of years, but they don't talk about it because they want to keep being sketchy and just brush it under the rug.
Well, I think we discussed this when the war in Ukraine started. It's like the war in Ukraine is proof, absolute proof that Western propaganda is the most potent form of propaganda in the world. Probably because the CIA is coordinating all of it. So the CIA, I have no doubt that the CIA is publishing fake stories in newspapers or feeding false information to newspapers to report that is deliberately designed to keep the nation divided so they can keep operating unopposed. Right. So it doesn't matter if Donald Trump's president. Guess what? They'll just release a new leak every single week. Breaking news headline: Donald Trump threatened to nuke a hurricane. Donald Trump said, let's do a moat around the freaking southern border, which is hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
But like also just like all these things like Donald Trump, you know, is a Russian asset. Like all of that, it just reeks of coordination. It just reeks of it. And so it's just like, and people aren't going to wake up to this. People, I don't, it's going to take a very focused and very determined right wing to turn this country around. We cannot rely on the rest of the normies to like come around to our ideas. We can't.
No, and the other reason why I think, although my idea of how this could play out is very cynical, there is a possibility that it could happen, is because Pelosi has positioned herself very opportunistically, being Speaker of the House, and also being Speaker of the House during such an abominable administration. See, it's a game of chess to these people.
But here's your theory will fall apart after the midterms, though. Because if Nancy Pelosi is not the Speaker of the House anymore, then the Republicans get to elect the president.
Right.
But I think they still will remove Biden.
They're going to remove Biden. I don't know if they're going to 25th Amendment Harris or, certify somebody else. Mm-hmm. It'd probably be in the best interest of the nation to certify somebody different than Harris. But if Pelosi remains Speaker of the House, I could see this being a real potential.
Well, the right-wing version of this theory, it's almost the exact inverse. The Republicans win a red wave, they impeach Biden, they impeach Harris, they elect Donald Trump the Speaker of the House because he doesn't have to be a member of Congress, and then he becomes president again. And then he gets to win another term.
Yeah, but just imagine Trump just being Speaker of the House.
That would be, honestly... That would
be hilarious.
If that's not a serious strategy being discussed by the Republicans, what use are you?
Yeah.
Donald Trump being the Speaker of the House would be like a big FU to the system.
Also, if you certify Trump president, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Speaker of the House.
Yes.
After you just put her on this fake BS trial to try to make sure she never runs for anything ever again.
I'm ready for the Republicans in the House of Representatives to form an explicit MAGA caucus, and I think they're already doing this, where they're just going to threaten not to pass any of the Republican agenda unless they get what they want.
That'd be amazing.
Kevin McCarthy should not be anywhere near the Speaker of the House. I know he's positioning for it. He's the obvious Politico choice,
He's the worst.
I know, and he's weak and spineless, and he doesn't understand the MAGA agenda at all. Marjorie Taylor Greene does, so...
Kevin McCarthy is the reason that the term rhino was developed. I swear to God, he is the sleaziest, slimiest freaking...
But we need you get Rand Paul, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey.
Oh, yeah.
You get Thomas Massey in there.
Who's that? The new guy.
I don't know. That's very descriptive.
Madison
Cawthorn?
Yeah, Madison
No, he
Cawthorn.
just got unelected.
Did he?
Yeah.
Damn
he lost his primary.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He would have been a good one, though, for that. But, start getting a MAGA... I'm sure there's a bunch of Republicans that are nameless to us, but that represent MAGA districts. So get all of those together, and then have Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene as, the leaders of that group. And then just say, we're not electing you Speaker of the House unless you give us our demands. Right. Or you're electing me. Or we're going to tank this and give it to the Democrats.
Right.
Because
if we can't have what we want, no one gets anything.
But here's the deal, right?
Yeah.
You could do that. You could say, we're just going to sink it, and if a Democrat gets elected Speaker of the House, then so be it. Because guess what? They're not going to be able to do anything anyway.
Right.
So it's why not?
Yeah, if there's a rhino in there, it's what's the difference?
Yeah, just threaten to sink the rhino.
You might as well just have a Democrat.
Right.
If you're going to have a rhino.
Send a strong message, because the Republicans aren't going to have a super majority, veto-proof majority anyway, right?
Yeah.
So they might as well just play hardball now before it matters. Right? Because it doesn't matter what the outcome is in this 2 years for the lame duck. It doesn't matter. So play hardball now, establish your power, and then when we win the presidency, now you're in a good position to actually get shit done.
Here's a fun one. Trump, this is the game Marry F. Kill, but politic edition. Trump, Speaker of the House, DeSantis president, Tulsi Gabbard VP.
Maybe.
That'd be fun.
Maybe.
Because Tulsi Gabbard is really more of a populist than anything.
Yeah.
She leans more socially democratic, but that'd be kind of fun.
She has been aligning with the right a lot more recently.
I do like a lot of her social safety net ideas as far as reform goes, because our welfare state is out of control.
Right.
But that would be kind of fun.
It would be.
Or getting a Hispanic woman in there as VP. Be but on the right, and then it's
Myra Flores, the one that just won in Texas 34.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Because then DeSantis could be like, look, I'm not a racist. And Trump could be like, look at my Hispanic.
All right.
Anyway, moving on.
Anyway, enough theory crafting, because we don't know if any of that's going to happen, but it's fun to think about. Yeah. So I want to talk about guns again, because I've been really into guns lately.
Yeah.
And this is a very interesting article for a couple of reasons. So I'm just going to put it on the screen here. This is from The Reload, which is cool. It's called Analysis. Guns are normal and normal people use guns, which is a normal statement. But this I love how this article frames the issue, because it's reasserting something that's obvious, but in clear, concrete terms. And I also have some numbers too. This is by David Yamain.
Sure.
Okay, so then I have a couple of excerpts here. So He says, I'm a sociologist who has been studying American gun culture for the past decade. My approach to the topic differs considerably from most of my gun studies colleagues. Rather than focusing on crime, injury, and death with firearms, my work is based on the proposition that guns are normal and normal people use guns. This is not an article of faith or a belief statement for me. Rather, it's based on my empirical observations of gun and gun owners. So I think this is like a really interesting like approach of the subject, because we always are hyper focused on the issues with the gun ownership, which means, if your citizenry is armed, that naturally means that there's going to be more violent crimes committed with guns, obviously, because they're available. It's going to mean there's going to be more suicide committed with guns. Like, all that stuff is true.
Right.
But examining it from the lens of, okay, what is that in the comparison of the total gun ownership, is a really good way to frame the issue. So he goes on to say, the normality of guns runs deep in human history. And this, I like this excerpt too. He says, the use of projectile weapons is behaviorally normal for Homo sapiens as a species. Right. Today's widely owned civilian firearms are part of an unbroken thread of what Randy Mayan calls the human-weapon relationship, stretching back to rocks in the uniquely evolved hands of our prehistoric ancestors. A paleoanthropologist, John Shea, concludes, projectile weaponry is uniquely human and culturally universal. We are the only species that uses projectile weaponry, and no human society has ever abandoned its use.
I feel like that is really insightful, because even if you just think about children who don't have many words in their vocabulary yet, if they're frustrated, they pick something and they throw it at you.
Exactly.
Right? That, whatever it is, just turn into a projectile weaponry right there, because they're trying to hurt you because they're upset and frustrated because you don't understand them. I'm going to pick up this rock, I'm going to throw it at you. I have a spitball, I'm going to spit it at you.
And
it's
I also like connecting it to a deeper part of human nature, because I don't think we do that enough. We live too much in the modern era, and we don't think about things like, drug use, for instance, is normal. Like, that's human universal, right? Alcohol, human universal. All language, I mean, all these kind of things. Projectile weaponry, warfare, all natural. So anything that arises as an issue involving projectile weaponry is like an issue that has been an issue for a long time.
I'm sure people were saying we need to outlaw spears or bows, bows, or we need to have some bow laws, like no hunting within city limits, or...
And that would be, maybe I'll do that for next episode, because it would be interesting to go back to like the medieval era and say like, what kind of laws were there about like what bows and what weapons you could have? Could you have a sling? Could you have...
Or like you entered the city walls or the city fence, and then you know, no weapons allowed. Like, you could fist fight or do whatever, carry a knife on you, but you weren't allowed to projectile weaponry anything,
Yeah.
Be interesting.
It would be
for
interesting.
Sure.
And so he goes on to say, although most societies today, consensually or not, give over to the state a monopoly on legitimate violence and hence the ability to restrict civilian ownership of projectile weaponry, the United States is an outlier in having a significant portion of the population who insist upon their right to own firearms independent of the state, a right written into the U.S. Constitution and many state constitutions. In early American history, guns were widely owned by those who could legally do so. One reliable estimate found guns in 50 to 73% of male estates and even 6 to 38% of female estates. These rates compare favorably to other common items listed in male estates like swords or edged weapons, 14% of inventories, Bibles, 25%, or cash, 30%. So he's just using those items to say, look, these are normal. Like, this is a normal part of like everyday items, right?
Yeah.
And then this is the last one. Last excerpt here, and then I have a couple of interesting numbers. So he writes, I have previously illustrated this using conservative estimates of guns and gun ownership and broad estimates of negative outcomes. And he's talking about injuries or fatalities with firearms here, including accidental and intentional deaths and injuries, as well as non-fatal criminal injuries and victimizations with firearms. I found that just 0.15% of guns and 0.79% of gun owners are involved in fatal or non-fatal injuries or victimizations involving firearms annually. So this is of the total firearm owners and of the total guns. Of the total guns, 0.15% are used in criminal acts.
Wow.
Of the total gun owners, 0.79% are involved in fatal or non-fatal injuries or victimizations involved from firearms. So that's just that includes, I believe, self-defense. So that 0.79% of gun owners includes when you kill somebody with your gun in self-defense. It's not just criminal.
Is that number including illegal gun owners?
That's a good question. He didn't say. I would imagine not.
Because I'm wondering if this is just legal gun ownership.
And I think all of this is like models and estimates because we don't really have it. We don't track guns in this country.
Right. So I imagine it would have to be just based off of numbers of legal gun ownership. And, you can, when a crime is committed or a gun is used in self-defense, that has a number that's associated with a gun owner on it. So I imagine that's where the 0.15% is coming from, because you can actually track that or at least trace it back. We don't track them necessarily, but there is a record of who has what gun when you buy it. So I imagine this would have to be just legal guns and legal gun owners, which is a very small percentage.
Right. So 0.15% of guns are involved in fatal incidents. So I just picked a random comparison stat, and I did a little bit of number crunching myself because I'm a nerd. And so I looked at Kentucky, and I looked at the car accident fatality rate. So Kentucky has 4.462 million people. There are 4,000 car fatalities annually. So this means that 0.08% of the entire population of Kentucky dies annually in a car crash. 0.08%. That's of the entire population. If you trimmed that down to only car owners, it would probably be in line with this gun statistic that we just saw, this 0.15%. So like putting it in perspective like that, like an equivalent number of people die in fatal car accidents as gun deaths every year is like, that puts it in a huge amount of perspective, because we don't go on the road and say like, oh, I'm probably going to die today. Like we just don't ever think about it because it's so rare, right?
Yeah. I want to say in our state last year, our total number of deaths from car accidents was much higher than 4,000.
Yeah, I could have cherry picked the worst state in terms of fatality rates, and that's West Virginia. They have like a really outsized.
Well, I don't know if you've ever been to West Virginia.
Well, it's mountainous and a lot of drunk people.
Yes.
But so I actually picked Kentucky, which is actually at the middle of the list for car accidents. So it's like as close to an average as you can get.
Yeah.
And I think the actual number's like 39 or 3,900 something, but I just rounded to 4,000. It's just like very rough math. And this is of the total population, which of course not everyone in the state owns a car.
Right.
So that is just an interesting perspective. It's, if you took only the car owners, it would be almost, I think it would be almost in line with the 0.15% number that we saw in this article.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, I just thought that was first of all, it's an interesting article.
Well, yeah, it is interesting.
And the framing, I think, is really useful.
Well, and the other thing too, you mentioned when you first started with this article was, you said that there's going to be incidences where there is non-fatal and fatal injury or death or what have you as a result of firing of a gun, as a result of just having the guns in the country. The opposite is also true. When you remove the guns, the violence doesn't go away, it just changes. So in places like England, they don't have firearms, but the numbers of murders and injuries and victimizations are not less. People are beheaded with machetes.
In the street.
They're stabbed. They are mown down with cars and buses. The rate of violence does not decrease, but the mode in which you do so changes. So I think that's an important thing to note too. I don't know what the statistics are, but I think the murder rate between the United Kingdom and the United States is very comparable percentage-wise. It's just they don't have guns to do it with. And
the crazy thing about the United States is that if you took out the violence in like the 3 biggest cities, if you just took that out of the equation entirely, I know you can't really do that, but let's just say you did, the United States would be among one of the safest nations in the entire world. And it already is among one of the safest nations, but especially when you take out the violent crime that happens in very specific geographic areas.
Yeah.
So it's like, to treat this as a national issue when it's clearly not is absurd, number one. And number two, I don't fear for my life when I go outside. I haven't even seen anyone holding a gun unless I know them.
Well, I actually did see a guy walk into the grocery store open carrying.
That's fine.
But I was like, cool. I had just left though, so I'm like, damn. I would have felt safer seeing you in the store. With, like, you're just open carrying .45, I think, on his hip. But you can do that where I live. It's fine.
Yeah, no one bats an eye.
No one bats an eye. No,
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, just okay, whatever. But I particularly hate that talking point against gun ownership, in that it's, if we got rid of guns, the violence would go away. Because when that did happen in Great Britain and the UK, the violence did not stop. It just changed. And it almost got worse because no one can defend themselves now.
And even still, that attack in Nice in France, is that how you say it? Nice, N-I-C-E?
Sure. I think it's like in Nice.
But that was like one of the worst terror attacks in the West ever. Yeah. And they did that with guns, despite the fact that you're not allowed to own guns in France. Well,
and I remember a few years back, I read this story. I don't remember all the details, obviously, but it was somewhere in the UK. This is going to be really vague, but there was 3 men that had started to attack just people sitting at an outdoor bistro on a patio or whatever. And they were using machetes and knives and things. And this guy just a bystander, pulled like big steer horns off the wall.
Wasn't it a narwhal tusk?
It was something like a horn of some kind. It was either steer horns or a narwhal tusk or something. It was taxidermied and mounted on the wall. He pulled it off and used it to stab these dudes.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, that's a once in a lifetime thing. And this guy was brave enough to even try. But if anyone had a personal firearm on them, people would not be getting their heads cut off in the middle of the street by these 3 terrorists. Because I think they were called domestic terrorists as a result of that, terrorists. I can't remember, but
plot twist, they were Muslims.
Yeah. And everyone was like, this is what happens when you take in refugees without vetting them.
Yep. That is the dumbest thing you could ever do.
Because I think they were Somalian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Refugees, bad.
Yeah.
Native-born Muslims, great people.
Yep.
That's been my experience anyway.
Yeah, so that story has always stuck with me. That it was just like, guns were not involved at all in that attack in any capacity. So to say that guns are the cause of all of this violence is just a ridiculous notion.
And it's just, just one more point. It just defies logic to like having a decentralized private security force is going to make the nation less safe.
Yeah.
And look, gun people, they're not like, the thing about having the freedom to own guns too, that a lot of people I don't think understand is that just because you can own a gun doesn't mean that you're going to. A lot of people, like I didn't own a gun until recently because I wasn't entirely comfortable with the idea.
Right.
But now that I've spent more time with them, spent some time doing research and stuff, I'm becoming more comfortable. I'm taking the responsibility seriously.
Right.
And that's been my experience of gun owners too. It's like they're very serious about safety. They're very serious about being trained and knowing the laws and all that stuff. They're very and people that aren't comfortable with all that don't get guns. It's like it's a self-selecting mechanism. You don't have to restrict anything. People who feel responsible and competent are automatically going to be the ones that adopt gun ownership.
Or maybe they don't feel responsible and competent. They're just in a gang and they just have a gun.
Right. But I'm
saying
is
a different problem, but
the people that choose to carry in public are most likely to be the people that know exactly what they're doing.
Which is why when I see someone open carrying, or even if I spot a concealed carry, because sometimes you can tell, I don't bat an eye, and 2, I'm like, okay, I feel safer because this person would not be carrying it in public if they were not well trained on it. It's just not something that happens, because if they aren't well trained on it, they're probably in a gang, and they're also the people that are, showing it to the world like this, waving it about, and they don't care who they shoot accidentally or whatever. Responsible gun owners will always have it in a holster until they need to use it. So that's the other thing too. I think there's a lot of Americans who don't want to take the time to learn about it, and they don't have any interest in it, so they just don't have guns. But that's fine too. You don't have to. No one is making you.
I was watching YouTube videos on the gun that I got, and people, like some of the videos were like super professional and everyone loves it, and some of the people were just like doing casual reviews, and like the comment section is brutal. People are like, what are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. Your thumb is in the wrong position. Like, these people are like, gun people are serious about, yeah, some of them are a little bit, there's like elitism or gatekeeping, whatever that happens. But most people are just like, hey, your discipline is terrible. Like, you didn't check the gun. You didn't do any of this, blah, blah, blah. Like, they are very like, they will point it out to you when you're doing something inappropriate with a gun. They're not shy about saying that. So
like, finger off the trigger. Don't point it at anybody. What are you doing? Always check the gun before, the person who hands it to you is supposed to check it, make sure nothing's in the chamber. When you get it, you're supposed to check it, make sure there's nothing in the chamber, and then you proceed from there.
Yeah.
Whoever's going to fire the gun needs to be the one to chamber the bullet.
Right.
That's how it is.
Yep.
And you never point it at anybody.
Yep. Or anything you don't intend to destroy.
Exactly.
All right. Clown World?
Oh, God, the Clown World. So I read this headline the other day and I laughed out loud, actually. So this is from the Post Millennial, always giving us gigs. It reads, Biden wants to send Americans gift cards for gas, but likely can't due to chip shortage.
The biggest facepalm of all time.
The Biden administration the subheading.
Oh, you want to read the subheading? Yeah. Let's go back to the subheading.
The Biden administration was forced to pull the brakes on their latest plan of simply sending Americans gift cards for gas after it was revealed that the ongoing chip shortage would make it nearly impossible.
Oh, I'm facepalming so hard, like metaphorically right now.
Metaphysically?
Metaphysically. But spiritually, I'm facepalming.
With the price of gas becoming prohibitively high across the country, the Biden administration has suggested a variety of solutions aimed at easing the burden on consumers. Except for the one solution that would actually do that.
Wow, what solution is that?
Reopening our pipelines and producing our own goddamn oil.
Yeah.
Anyway, all that oil that could power the entire world for 1,000 years, it's fine. They were forced to pull the brakes on their latest plan. Yeah, we already read that. Anyway, that was a subheading. Aside from the chip shortage, it was noted that realistically, there would be no way to stop Americans from using their gas cards for other things, as many did with the COVID-19 relief checks that were intended to be used on essential goods. Note the spelling of checks. This is someone writing from British Columbia.
Or Canada.
That's British Columbia.
Yeah, never mind.
According to Gizmodo, this is not the first time the Biden administration has looked into providing gas cards to Americans to offset rising prices. The idea was floated in March, but nixed after they realized the IRS would be in charge of distributing the cards. Gas prices have reached record levels across the country, with the national average sitting at $5 per gallon, which is what we have here in our area.
So there's two problems here. Number one, obviously the chip shortage was... This wouldn't be a problem if you were manufacturing chips in the United States.
Correct.
So that's a national security issue, number one. The fact that we're not focused... I mean, Intel is building a plant in Ohio, I believe, in Columbus.
That's for something else, though.
It's chips. It's chip factory.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a specific kind of chip, I think, but I don't... But anyway, so that's one issue is it's a national security issue that should have been solved a long time ago, right? So that's number one. Number two, we're already in a high inflationary period and you're going to send out more money.
Yeah.
Billions of dollars. Great idea. And number three, you're going to drive up the demand for gasoline at a point when gasoline is scarce. If you give everyone gas money, everyone's going to want gas.
Right.
It's going to deplete or drive up the prices even faster.
Right.
So it's like it's hard to say that this is not intentional. Like, how can you be so stupid to do exactly the thing that would make the problem worse? It's got to be intentional.
It has to be, because you're trying to figure out ways to make gas prices decrease, but you're trying to do everything except the one thing that will alleviate this pain on people. And also, instead of putting billions of dollars where we need it, as in gas production, chip production, and baby formula production, we're sending billions of dollars in cash and in weapons to freaking Ukraine. It's like, where are your priorities? One, okay, it's a proxy war with Russia. Got it, fine. We've been fighting those for how many decades now?
Lots.
It's not a priority.
Ever since the end of World War II.
It's not a priority anymore. It just isn't. We're going to be doing this forever with Russia. Can be put on the back burner. Number two, you don't care about your babies. obviously. And number 3, you don't care about the hardworking American people. It's like your priorities are so skewed in a time of crisis that you've created.
Yeah.
And they're trying to act like, oh, we inherited it. It's not our fault. We're just trying to figure out the best way to solve this problem, except for the obvious solution.
Right.
And then they expect us to just go, oh, well, at least they're trying to do something with gas cards because they think we're stupid and can't see that it's their fault we're in this position anyway.
Right.
Like, how dumb do they think people are? People are paying $5.10 a gallon where we live per gallon of gas.
Yeah.
Any American's going to go, why was it $2 2 years ago and now it's over double?
Right.
How? And then they go, oh, yeah, because we don't make our own oil now. We don't produce it.
Right.
We don't drill for it.
And then I don't know. Yeah.
And then you get these over and over and over again. You get these high-level secretaries going, well, just buy an electric vehicle.
Yeah. It's intentional. Like, it's got to be.
It has to be.
I don't know why, because obviously it's not going to work out for them because everyone's going to vote Republican. But it's like, I have a hard time believing that people are this incompetent. It's either that they're incompetent or they're slaves to their ideology.
Well, it's that, I think, is part of it. Because they want to go green so bad.
Right. They are willing to make sacrifices on behalf of everyone else. Like
we did not agree to.
Right. They're willing to sacrifice the well-being of everyone else to achieve their ideology because it doesn't hurt them. These people, they don't care how much gas is. They probably, certainly President Biden doesn't pay for his own gas.
Doesn't pay for his own gas, and he takes Air Force One.
Yeah.
So what are we... it's just baffling. I'm like, thanks for the chuckle, post-millennial, but this is just ridiculous. I just don't see how the average American can go, in 2 years, you're paying double what you were before for gas and not see that there is something fundamentally wrong with what's happening. I do not believe that most Americans are buying that it's Putin's price hike or that it's a result of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. I don't think most people buy that at all.
I don't think so either.
I just don't.
I don't know. I don't have anything to say other than, I don't know how this happens.
It's frustrating for sure.
There's a lot of, the moral of the story is they weren't able to do it anyway. So thank goodness for that. We're being saved from their stupidity by their own stupidity. So let's just hope that happens more, that they don't make it worse at least.
I want it to not get worse, but I believe that they can make it worse.
Yeah, I'm sure it will get worse, but...
Also, just a side note, this just thought popped into my head. Elon Musk endorsed DeSantis for 2024.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He did. That'll be cool.
That would be funny. And then DeSantis is like, I love support from African Americans.
Yeah. I wish we had that clip, but we don't.
I don't.
That was funny, though.
It was funny.
Okay, so this is our last story. You titled this, Eric Adams is also a dumbass.
Yes, because my Newsom one was titled Newsom is a dumbass.
Yeah.
Again, this is my third story about just Democrats being dumb. Democrats being Democrats. So Mayor Eric Adams, who's the mayor of New York City, just tweeted out recently, drag storytellers and the libraries and schools that support them are advancing a love of diversity, personal expression, and literacy that is core to what our city embraces. At a time when our LGBTQ plus communities are under increased attack across the country, we must use our education system to educate. The goal is not only for our children to be academically smart, but also emotionally intelligent.
Sounds like communist propaganda, but okay. Have you seen that meme? Sounds like
No, I haven't. Okay. But just a couple notes here. Have you ever stopped to wonder why the LGBTQ community is under increasing attack?
Because they're narcissistic, delusional idiots.
And also they're all pedophiles?
That's true.
And also, my first thought when I had heard that he tweeted this, because I don't have Twitter, so I didn't see it myself firsthand, was how on earth is this a priority when our 12th graders have a very low literacy rate?
Mm-hmm.
And how specifically is a drag queen reading to little children going to help 12th graders with their literacy? or even 8th graders with their literacy? Is it drag story hour of To Kill a Mockingbird or what? Or is it only 3-year-old cardboard storybooks?
It's a Trojan horse for something else. They're using something unobjectionable like reading proficiency to smuggle in ideology.
Well, I understand. Yeah, but it's very obvious that it is ironic because he wants to put city funds to Drag Queen Story Hour to promote literacy while not funding schools where they could actually promote literacy.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
I don't know. And
again,
also,
these Democrats think that we're stupid.
Also, who are these people going to story hours in the age of the internet?
I mean, it's socialization for little kids.
Put on a YouTube video.
No.
Well,
that
if you're
just makes
homeschooling your kids.
Dumb. No, you should probably take your kids to be socialized.
I would tell my kids, you put down those damn books. I'm just kidding. I'll be like, what are you doing? Doing that reading?
Internet screens will make your kids zombies and ideological robots.
Internet screens will make my kids the next innovators. You want to challenge me?
Okay.
They're going to be the next Elon Musk.
I wanted to look up some stats on literacy just in the country because, you know, like you said, this is a Trojan horse. They're trying to wrap this up in wanting to promote literacy. But as of 2013...
Is this the one you want to be on?
Yeah. As of 2013, from the Program for the International Assessment of Adult Competencies, only 48% of people in the United States, adults, can read at an 8th grade level or above.
Wow.
48%. So 52% of our people in this country have a 7th grade literacy rate or lower.
Wow.
That is way too high. 52% of people should not be reading at such a low proficiency.
Right.
And that is not me hating on anyone who's illiterate. That is our school system failing people. And not actually failing them like they should be.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
You're letting these people pass these grades because you feel sorry for them developmentally or whatever, but they're not actually getting what they need through these proficiency tests. And they keep lessening the criteria for proficiency, and they keep dumbing down curricula, and it is ruining our people. You should be able to at least read at an 8th grade level, if not a 10th grade level.
This is the typical left-wing solution to any problem, right? Is that, oh, we have high literacy rates, so what are they going to do? Well, we'll just raise the bar for what's considered literate. Or lower the bar, rather.
Right.
So they always make it easier rather than demanding excellence.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, well, we have high school students, like, you know, we have so many high school dropouts or so many people failing high school. How are we going to solve this issue? We'll remove a bunch of the requirements. That solves the issue. It's like, no, it doesn't do it. Like, it solves it on paper. Oh, higher percentage of students are graduating now because we removed all of the work that they need to do. Okay. Well, that solves your number problem, but it doesn't solve the underlying problem. And this is what bothers me most about the left wing, is that they do not approach solutions the proper way. They never fix anything at the source. It's always it's a tower of band-aids. They just keep stacking band-aids, and the problem keeps getting worse and worse and festering under that freaking tower of band-aids. And then we're left with this, where in the real world they're SOL because the system failed them.
Right. Well, and that's the point you just made is really beneficial to even looking at this graph, because that was as of 2013, and they were going off of whatever literacy standards were in 2013. And we know for a fact that they have been reduced since then because of all the pandemic shit that happened in the last 2 years. They had to lower literacy rates and competency rates and proficiency rates because they wanted people to still move through school, instead of just saying, nope, everyone's repeating the grade they just did because nobody learned anything. And we're back in school now and you can learn again. Instead of making everyone repeat, they just said, meh, just carry on through. And so I was trying to find anything that was as of 2020 or 2021, but I could not find anything. So that one was from 2013. So I imagine those rates are different now. But this is as of 2018. This USA facts link that this took us to. So this is grade 12 reading, percent of students at or above proficient. And again, we don't know what they're considering proficient. But in 2010, it was 38% students were at or above proficient. And then in 2015, it dropped to 37%. And I guess has stayed pretty consistent through 2019 at 37%. That is not a high number at all.
No.
37% at or above proficient grade 12 reading. How are you passing any of these students?
Right.
They should be failing.
They should be.
Your literacy rate in reading proficiency should be at least 70% because that's a passing grade.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. It should be far higher than it is, you know.
Right.
I wonder too how many people simply don't have the cognitive capacity to do it. Because like our society keeps getting more complex and demands more cognitive ability for all kinds of things. Computer literacy. We're moving increasingly into a tech era where like if you don't have like programming skills, good luck finding a good job. You know, it's like it's the cognitive load is getting higher and higher and higher as we advance, which I think necessarily means that a smaller and smaller percentage of the population is going to be able to keep up. So I wonder how much of that is this. I mean, literacy hasn't really changed since reading, but that is one version of cognitive load, right? Oh, you need to learn how to read. There's only going to be so many people in the population that can read at these higher levels. I think that's just a fact. There's an absolute ceiling to the number of people that can. But then you stack on top of that other cognitive loads, computer proficiency, right? Financial proficiency.
Right.
You stack on all these things and like you can see how the number of people that are proficient in all those things shrinks.
Well, sure. But I think as far as just basic reading comprehension, that should be an easier goal to achieve by the 12th grade.
Yes.
Than all of these other things.
Right.
Because you're right. Yes. Computer literacy is going to be much harder for people to achieve, but maybe not anymore because everyone that's being born now just has computers all the time from day one.
I'm talking about an IQ ceiling, though. I'm talking about society could become so complex that only the top 30 percentile of IQ can operate proficiently in society. Like I'm saying, if our IQs don't go up, but our society is getting more complex, that means that there's a smaller number of people that can interact with the society proficiently.
Yes and no. I think that's only going to happen if we move our society to be completely automated. You know, like we're always going to need trashmen or electricians or plumbers.
Right.
So unless you replace all of those jobs with robots somehow, some way, and the only jobs that are available are robot operator or robot programmer, sure, you're going to run into that problem with a complex society. But until that happens, I think it's a fallacy to say that you can't find a good job if you're not
That's
proficient
what I'm saying.
in these
I'm
things.
saying that the society is getting more complex and it's getting harder for people to be proficient in things. So like you add literacy, like computer literacy is a great example because if you don't know how to use a computer, you're at a very huge disadvantage.
Right.
Doesn't mean you can't find a job. It just means that all of the really high quality jobs that involve computer use are not achievable for you.
Right.
In the same way that if you need to have a job where you're very literarily proficient, those jobs are going to be out of reach of you.
Right.
And I'm saying, like, if you compound these things, if you stack all of these things on top of each other, now you've just got a very narrow range of jobs that you could do or places in society that you can fit into. And it's hard to imagine, obviously, but imagine another world-changing invention like the computer that just is more complex.
Yeah.
Now the best jobs are only going to be available to the people that can interface with that technology. Right. So that's what I'm saying. It's like it's getting more complex, and I think that we're outrunning our IQ in some ways. And I think that reading perhaps might have been the first technology that demonstrated this. You know, before written history, before literature was a thing, society was relatively simple.
That's true.
It was all manual labor, whatever. Then you get literacy. Some people aren't going to be able to read. Some people aren't going to ever learn how to read. Some people might know how to read, but won't know how to read the most valuable information because it's too esoteric. Right. But we could deal with that for a few hundred years. Now you add computers.
Right.
It's another level. Now you add financial systems, complex financial systems. That's another. So that's all I'm saying. It's like the load is getting higher and higher and higher.
If you go to the link of this article, there's 2 or 3 other charts I wanted to look at, and they break it down a little bit more. So this is grade 12 reading, percent of students at or above proficient by sex. So the female students are at about 41 to 42% proficiency or above to 2019 versus about 32% for males.
Wow.
So that shows us clearly that we're failing our male students. And then this is a breakdown of it by race. So the white students and the Asian Pacific Islanders, they're closer to the 50%, but still...
That's still not a lot.
That's still so low. Especially from the Asian Pacific Islander, you would expect that line to be much higher. And they still aren't even quite at 50%. It's more like 49, 48%. And then the next closest line is 2 or more races, mixed race, and they're just right in the middle of 45% or whatever. And then the next one from there is American Indian, Native American, and they're still higher than Hispanic students. And then the Hispanic students are still even higher than our Black students, who are sitting at about a 15%, 17%
wow
literacy rate.
Wow, that's terrible.
And that's for male and female students by race.
Yeah, that's all race. Yeah, wow, that's crazy.
So I would say, I could buy that our nation is racist if we're looking at literacy rate. But also, if you keep lessening standards or just erasing them completely from your curriculum to be more racially equitable, this is what you're going to end up with.
It's just going to be a race to the bottom.
Yep.
That's what equity is. Like,
yep.
That's a famous cartoon of like equity is people looking over the fence.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, everyone gets to see equally over the fence. But in reality, it's like, nope, they just cut off the people's legs so they're all at the bottom. Like they just, one person's taller.
Well, I think the picture is supposed to be like a different amount of crates stacked for people. But
yeah, it's like equity is like, oh, you distribute the crates such that everyone's at the same height looking over the fence to whatever game they're watching.
Right.
But in practice, the meme is in practice, there are no crates. And they cut off all the tall people's legs so that they're the same height as the short people.
So no one can watch the game.
Exactly. Yeah, see, it's a race because that's how equity works in practice, because it's a lot harder to get equal outcomes at the top end of things.
Right.
It's a lot easier to get equal outcomes at the bottom end of things.
Right.
It's a lot easier to make everyone poor than it is to make everyone rich. In fact, you can't make everyone rich because that defies economic laws. Right. If everyone has the same amount of things, no one's rich.
You're just a capitalist bigot.
Yes. I am a pro-capitalist bigot.
But, these stats just make me really sad because I feel like we could be doing so much better for our children.
Yeah.
And to have a mayor of a major city in our country, trying to say that drag queens are going to make our children more literate is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's just not true at all.
It's just a Trojan horse. That's all it is.
I don't know. Did you see that video that Libs of TikTok posted about the drag queen story hour? There was a Libs of TikTok video. There was a drag queen story hour in California somewhere. And these group of protesters went into the story hour and they said, "Who let the pedophile in here?
Oh, wow.
Who let the tranny in here?" And the 2 librarians, their first thing was, "You have to wear a mask in here."
Oh my gosh.
And the guy was like, "No, thank you." And then they just kept asking, "Who let the pedophile in here?" And they're like, "It's not optional." And he goes, "We're medically exempt, thank you. Who let the pedophile in here?" And they had no response. And then the other librarian was like, "This is for children." And he's like, "Why would you bring your children here? Who let the pedophile in here?"
Right.
Because I guess there had been videos that resurfaced of this drag queen like saying really inappropriate things about kids and saying that they wanted to like eat them and like really satanic stuff.
I think that's the way to do it. Like we need to start publicly calling out the degeneracy. Like, we need to start making it socially unacceptable to be dressed in drag in public.
Yes.
Like, that needs to be, you should be embarrassed and afraid to do that. Not for your life, but just afraid of social ostracization.
Yeah.
That needs to come back. We've been too polite. We need to start saying, we need to start bringing shame back. We need to start shaming people. No, you're being ridiculous. You're being delusional. You're being degenerate. We don't want to see it. We don't want you. Go away. That's what needs to happen. And sorry, if that makes me a bigot, good.
Well,
good.
The whole point of drag is to hypersexualize women, and it's like a fetish for some of them to dress up, be men that dress up like women.
Yeah.
It's not anything that children need to be exposed to or should be exposed to ever. And you're gonna love this. The men that were protesting this drag queen story hour are now being investigated on hate crime charges.
Well, they didn't commit a crime, so
annoyance of children, because apparently being a drag queen is now a protected class.
But
and they said anti-LGBT slurs, and I'm like, what, tranny?
Yeah.
Or pedophile?
Yeah.
Because if now pedophiles under the alphabet soup umbrella, we're doomed.
Well, that's not, they might be investigating, but good luck. They were just exercising their free speech.
Yeah,
so.
And it's a public library. They're allowed to go in there.
Right.
Nowhere does it say no adults allowed in here, because obviously the children's parents are there with them.
Yeah.
So.
Good stuff. Cool.
Everyone needs to start calling these people out for being creeps.
Shame them.
Including Mayor Eric Adams.
Yeah, well, New York City's lost, so.
Creeps.
New York City, don't waste your energy in New York City. Go somewhere else.
Just move.
Let New York City fail on its own merits.
It's working on it.
Cool. Is that it?
That's all I had.
Cool. Well, that was episode 21 of Take Your Medicine. Once again, I'm Jacob.
And I'm Sadie.
And you can check out the links in the description wherever you're watching or listening. And yeah, I guess have a good one.
See you next time.